Hello everyone, it's me, Salty. Welcome to my stream. Tonight we're going to be continuing to read Dracula. It's alright. Give me a second. Anyway, I was just waiting for Dad to wander off. Okay, so. Hello, Thrasher Kitty. Hello, Forest. How you doing? Hello, everyone. And hello, VOD watchers. Who I see. Well, I don't see who's watching the VODs, but I see there are numbers going. So people are watching the VODs. And I like that. Yeah, yesterday on Dracula, they caught Dracula red-handed, drinking Mina's blood, and then forcing her to drink his blood. What does this mean? So, they really should have seen that coming. I mean, this is one of the better books of that era, like 1897, but still, that was like the author was kind of stretching it a bit, thinking that they would just ignore that Mina was getting paler for a couple of days, and that Dracula wasn't going to mess with them. What did they think Dracula was doing all this time? Just chilling out, waiting for them to take his boxes of dirt. I mean that literally, by the way. He has boxes full of dirt. So anyway, we're going to continue with the start of chapter 22, which is Jonathan Harker's journal. So yeah, don't think I've got anything to add. No. Okay. Might as well just jump in. Okay, so Jonathan Harker's journal. I really should stop putting milk in my tea. But it tastes so nice. 3rd of October. As I must do something or go mad, I write this diary. It is now 6 o'clock, and we are to meet in the study in half an hour, and take something to eat, for Dr. Van Helsing and Dr. Seward are agreed that if we do not eat, we cannot work our best. Our best will be, God knows, required today. I must keep writing at every chance, for I dare not stop to think. All, big and little, must go down. Perhaps at the end, the little things may teach us most. The teaching, big or little, could not have landed Mina or me anywhere worse than we are today. However, we must trust and hope. Poor Mina told me just now, with the tears running down her dear cheeks, that it is in trouble and trial that our faith is tested. That we must keep on trusting, and that God will aid us up to the end. The end? Oh my God, what end? To work. When Dr. Van Helsing and Dr. Seward had come back from seeing poor Renfield, we went gravely into what was to be done. First, Dr. Seward told us that when he and Dr. Van Helsing had gone down to the room below, they had found Renfield lying on the floor, all in a heap. His face was all bruised and crushed in, and the bones of the neck were broken. Dr. Seward asked the attendant who was on duty in the passage if he'd heard anything. He said that he had been sitting down. He confessed to half dozing when he heard loud voices in the room. And then Renfield had called out loudly several times, "God, God, God." After that there was a sound of falling, and when he entered the room he found him lying on the floor, face down, just as the doctors had seen him. Van Helsing asked if he had heard voices or a voice, and he said he could not say. That at first it had seemed to him as if there were two, but as there was no one in the room it could only have been one. He could swear to it, if required, that the word God was spoken by the patient. Dr. Seward said to us, when we were alone, that he did not wish to go into the matter. The question of an inquest had to be considered, and it would never do to put forward the truth, as no one would believe it. As it was, he thought that, on the attendant's evidence, he could give a certificate of death by misadventure in falling from bed. In case the coroner should demand it, there would be a formal inquest, necessary to the same result. When the question began to be discussed as to what should be our next step, the very first thing we decided was that Mina should be in full confidence. "They should have done that in the start." But nothing of any sort, no matter how painful, should be kept from her. She herself agreed as to its wisdom, and it was pitiful to see her so brave and yet so sorrowful, and in such a depth of despair. If you remember yesterday, chat, Dracula cursed Mina to, I think that was, gave her his blood. He cursed her to basically always respond to his call wherever he was in the world, and that he would always try by any means to go to him when he called, and that was his curse. "There must be no concealment," she said. "Alas, we've had too much already. And besides, there is nothing in all the world that can give me more pain than I have already endured, than I suffer now. Whatever may happen, it must be of our new hope, or of new courage to me." Van Helsing was looking at her fixedly as she spoke, and said suddenly but quietly, But dear Madam Mina, are you not afraid? Not for yourself, but for others from yourself, after what has happened?" Her face grew set in its lines, but her eyes shone with the devotion of a martyr as she answered, "No, for my mind is made up." "To what?" he asked gently, whilst we were all very still, for each in our own way we had a sort of vague idea of what she meant. Her answer came with direct simplicity, as though she was simply stating a fact. "Because if I find in myself, I shall watch keenly for it, a sign of harm to any that I love. I shall die." You would not kill yourself? He asked hoarsely. I would, if there were no friend who loved me, who would save me such a pain and so desperate an effort. She looked at him meaningly as she spoke. He was sitting down, but now he rose and came close to her and put his hand on her head as he said solemnly, My child, there is such an one if it were for your good. For myself, I could hold it in my account with God to find such a euthanasia for you, even at this moment, if it were best, nay, were it safe. But my child, for a moment he seemed choked, and a great sob rose in his throat. He gulped it down and went on. There are here some who would stand between you and death. You must not die. You must not die by any hand, but least of all your own. Until the other, who has fouled your sweet life, is true dead, you must not die. For if he is still with the quick undead, your death would make you even as he is. No, you must live. You must struggle and strive to live, though death would seem a boon unspeakable. You must fight death himself, though he come to you in pain or in joy, by the day or the night, or in safety or in peril. On your living soul, I charge you that you do not die. Nay, nor think of death, till this great evil be past. So if you didn't catch that, he's basically saying, if you die, you become a vampire. The poor dear grew white as death, and shook and shivered, as I have seen a quicksand shake and shiver at the incoming of the tide. We were all silent. We could do nothing. At length she grew more calm, and turning to him said sweetly, but oh so sorrowfully, as she held out her hand, I promise you, my dear friend, that if God will let me live, I shall strive to do so. Till, if it may be in his good time, this horror may have passed away from me. She was so good and brave that we all felt that our hearts were strengthened to work and endure for her, and we began to discuss what we were to do. I told her that she was to have all the papers in the safe, and all the papers or diaries and phonographs we might hereafter use, and was to keep the record as she had done before. She was pleased with the prospect of anything to do, if pleased could be used in connection with so grim an interest. As usual, Van Helsing had thought ahead of everyone else, and was prepared with an exact ordering of our work. It is perhaps well, he said, that our meeting after our visit to Carfax, we decided not to do anything with the earth boxes that lay there. Had we done so, the Count must have guessed our purpose, and would doubtless have taken measures in advance to frustrate such an effort with regard to the others. But now he does not know our intention. Nay, more in all probability, he does not know that such a power exists to us as can sterilize his lairs, so that he cannot use them as of old. We are now so much further advanced in our knowledge as to their disposition, that when we have examined the house in Piccadilly, we may track the very last of them. Then, today then, is ours, and in it rests our hope.
You are my most favorite creation.
Acid. Thank you for subscribing, you lovely. I want to, hello, how are you? Where is the... I didn't set up your sound for that.
The possum goes, ah! The possum goes, ah!
That's Acid's sound. I need to set it up for your subscribing. Have good luck, Acid. I'm glad to see you. Thank you for lurking. Okay. So, the plan is they're going after Dracula's boxes of earth that contain the soil of his homeland, which allows him to rest. Wouldn't Dracula know or suspect that that's what they're up to? Anyway. Here I started up, for I could not contain myself at the thought that the minutes and seconds, so preciously laden with Mina's life and happiness, were flying from us, since whilst we talked, action was impossible. But Van Helsing held up his hand warningly. "Nay, friend Jonathan," he said, "in this, the quickest way home is the longest way, so your proverbs say. We shall act, and act with desperate quick, when the time has come. But think, in all probable, the key of the situation is in that house in Piccadilly. The Count may have many houses which he has bought. Of them he will have deeds of purchase, keys, and other things. He will have paper that he write on. He will have his book of checks. There are many belongings that he must have somewhere. Why not in this place, so central, so quiet, where he come and go by the front or back at all hours?" Hello, Snap. When in the very vast of the traffic, there is no one to notice. We shall go there and search that house. And when we learn what it holds, then we do what our friend Arthur call, in his phrases of hunt, stops the earths. And so we run down our old fox. So, is it not? That must be a fox hunting phrase. Stop the earths. "Then let us come at once," I cried. "We are wasting the precious, precious time. Have good luck, Snaps. Thank you for being here." The professor did not move, but simply said, "And how are we to get into that house in Piccadilly?" "Anyway," I cried, "we shall break in if need be." "And your police? Where will they be? And what will they say?" I was staggered, but I knew that if he wished to delay, he had a good reason for it. So I said as quietly as I could, "Don't wait more than need be. You know, I'm sure, what torture I'm in." "Ah, my child, that I do, and indeed there is no wish of me to add to your anguish. But just think, what can we do until all the world be at movement? Then will come our time. I have thought and thought, and it seems to me that the simplest way is best of all. Now we wish to get into the house, but we have not got a key. Is that not so?" I nodded. "Now suppose that you were, in truth, the owner of that house, and could not still get in. And think there was to you no conscience of the housebreaker? What would you do? I should get a respectable locksmith and set him to work to pick the lock for me. And your police? They would interfere, would they not? Oh no, not if they knew the man was properly employed. Then? He looked at me as keenly as he spoke. All that is in doubt is the conscience of the employer, and the belief of your policemen as to whether or not that employer has a good conscience or a bad one. Your police must indeed be a zealous men, and clever, oh so clever, in reading the heart, that they trouble themselves in such matter. No, my friend Jonathan. You go take the lock of 100 empty houses in this your London, or of any city in the world, and if you do it as such things are rightly done, and at the time such things are rightly done, no one will interfere. I have read of a gentleman who owned a so fine house in London, and when he went for months of summer to Switzerland and lock up his house, some burglar come and broke the window at the back and got in. Then he went and made open the shutters in the front and walk out and in through the door before the very eyes of the police. Then he have an auction in that house and advertise it and put up a big notice. And when the day comes, he sell off by a great auctioneer all the goods of that other man who owned them. Then he go to a builder, and he sell him that house, making an agreement that he pull it down, and take away within a certain time. And your police and other authority help him all they can. And when that owner come back from his holiday in Switzerland, he find only an empty hole where his house had been. I wonder if that's a true story. This was all done on regal, and in our work we shall be on regal too. I'm going to look up what on regal means. I'm guessing it means above board or something like that. As a rule. So that's French. It is French. It means as a rule. I'm guessing it means legally, or something similar to that. Or rulefully. We shall not go so early that the policemen, who have then little to think of, shall deem it strange. But we shall go after 10 o'clock, when there are many about, and such things would be done when were we indeed owners of the house. I could not but see how right he was, and the terrible despair of Mina's face became relaxed in thought. There was hope in such good counsel. Van Helsing went on. When, once within that house, we may find more clues. At any rate, some of us can remain there, whilst the rest find the other places where there be more earth boxes, at Bermondsey and Mile End. Lord Godalming stood up. Or is it Godalming? I can be of some use here, he said. I shall wire to my people to have horses and carriages where they will be most convenient. Now look here, old fellow, said Morris. It is a capital idea to have all of it ready in case we want to go horsebacking. But don't you think that one of your snappy carriages with its heraldic adornments and a byway of Walworth or Mile End would attract too much attention for our purpose. Seems to me we ought to take cabs when we go south or east, and even leave 'em somewhere near the neighbourhood we are going to. Friend Quincy is right, said the professor. His head is what you call in plane with the horizon. It is a difficult thing that we go to do, and we do not want no peoples to watch us, if it so may. Mina took a growing interest in everything, and I was rejoiced to see that the exigency of affairs was helping her to forget for a time the terrible experience of that night. She was very, very pale, almost ghastly, and so thin that her lips were drawn away, showing her teeth in somewhat of prominence. I did not mention this, lest it should give her needless pain, but it made my blood run cold in my veins to think of what had occurred with poor Lucy when the Count had sucked her blood. As yet there were no sign of the teeth growing sharper, but the time as yet was short, and there was time for fear. When we came to the discussion of the sequence of our efforts and of the disposition of our forces, there were new sources of doubt. It was finally agreed that before starting for Piccadilly, we should destroy the Count's lair close at hand. In case he should find it out too soon, we should thus be still ahead of him in our work of destruction. And his presence, in his purely material shape, and at his weakest, might give us some new clue. As to the disposal of forces, it was suggested by the professor that, after our visit to Carfax, we should all enter the house in Piccadilly, that the two doctors and I should remain there, whilst Lord Godalming and Quincy found the lairs at Walworth and Mile End and destroyed them. It was possible, if not likely, the professor urged, that the Count might appear in Piccadilly during the day, and that if so we might be able to cope with him then and there. At any rate, we might be able to follow him in force. To this plan I strenuously objected, and so far as my going was concerned, for I said that I intended to stay and protect Mina. I thought that my mind was made up on the subject, but Mina would not listen to my objection. She said that there might be some law matter in which I could be useful, that amongst the Count's papers might be some clue which I could understand out of my experience in Transylvania, and that, as it was, all the strength we could muster was required to cope with the Count's extraordinary power. I had to give in, for Mina's resolution was fixed. She said that it was the last hope for her, that we should all work together. I hope they're all taking their crucifixes. Because you don't want to go toe-to-toe with Dracula without one. As for me, she said, I have no fear. Things have been as bad as they can be, and whatever may happen must have in it some element of hope or comfort. Go, my husband. God can, if he wishes it, guard me as well alone as with anyone present. So I started up, crying out, Then in God's name, let us come at once, for we are losing time. The Count may come to Piccadilly earlier than we think. Not so, said Van Helsing, holding up his hand. But why? I asked. Do you forget? He said, with actually a smile, that last night he banqueted heavily and will sleep late. And will sleep late, Did I forget? Shall I ever? Can I ever? Can any of us ever forget that terrible scene? Mina struggled hard to keep her brave countenance, but the pain overmastered her, and she put her hands before her face and shuddered whilst she moaned. Van Helsing had not intended to recall her frightful experience. He had simply lost sight of her and her part in the affair in his intellectual effort. When it struck him what he had said, he was horrified at this thoughtlessness and tried to comfort her. "Oh, Madam Mina," he said. "Dear, dear Madam Mina, alas, that I of all who so reverence you should have said anything so forgetful. These stupid old lips of mine and this stupid old head do not deserve so. But you will forget it, will you not?" He bent low beside her as he spoke. She took his hand, and looking at him through her tears, said hoarsely, "No, I shall not forget, for it is well that I remember, and with it I have so much in memory of you that is sweet, that I take it all together. Now, we must all be going soon. Breakfast is ready, and we must all eat, that we may be strong." Breakfast was a strange meal to us all. We tried to be cheerful and encourage each other, and Mina was the brightest and most cheerful of us. When it was over, Van Helsing stood up and said, "Now, my dear friends, we go forth to our terrible enterprise. Are we all armed, as we were on that night when we first visited our enemy's lair? Armed against ghostly as well as carnal attack?" We all assured him. "Then it is well. Now, Madam Mina, you are in any case quite safe here until the sunset. And before then we shall return, if we shall return. But before we go, let me see you armed against personal attack. I have myself, since you came down, prepared your chamber by placing of things of which we know, so that he may not enter. Now let me guard yourself. On your forehead I touch this piece of sacred wafer, in the name of the Father, the Son, and—" There was a fearful scream which almost froze our hearts to hear. As he had placed the wafer on Mina's forehead, it had seared it, had burned into the flesh as though it had been a piece of white-hot metal. My poor darling's brain had told her the significance of the fact as quickly as her nerves received the pain of it, and the two so overwhelmed her that her overwrought nature had its voice in that dreadful scream. But the words to her thought came quickly. The echo of the scream had not ceased to ring on the air when there came the reaction, and she sank on her knees on the floor in an agony of abasement. Pulling her beautiful hair over her face, as the leper of old his mantle, she wailed out, "Unclean! Unclean! Even the Almighty shuns my polluted flesh. I must bear this mark of shame upon my forehead until Judgment Day." They all paused. I had thrown myself beside her in an agony of helpless grief, and putting my arms around her, held her tight. For a few minutes our sorrowful hearts beat together, whilst the friends around us turned away their eyes that ran tears silently. Then Van Helsing turned, said, gravely, so gravely that I could not help feeling that he was in some way inspired, and was stating things outside himself. It may be that you may have to bear that mark till God himself see fit, as he most surely shall on Judgment Day, to redress all wrongs of the earth and of his children that he placed thereon. And, oh, Madam Mina, my dear, may we who love you be there to see, when that red scar, the sign of God's knowledge of what has been, shall pass away, leave your forehead as pure as the heart we know. For so surely as we live, that scar shall pass away, when God sees right to lift the burden that is hard upon us. Till then, we bear our cross, as his Son did in obedience to his will. It may be that we are chosen instruments of his good pleasure, that we ascend to his bidding, as that other through stripes and shame, through tears and blood, through doubts and fear, and all that makes the difference between God and man. There was hope in his words and comfort, and they made for resignation. Mina and I both felt so, and simultaneously we each took one of the old man's hands and bent over and kissed it. Then without a word we all knelt down together, and all holding hands swore to be true to each other. We men pledged ourselves to raise the veil of sorrow from the head of her whom, each in his own way, we loved, and we prayed for help and guidance in the terrible task which lay before us. It was then time to start. So I said farewell to Mina, a parting which neither of us shall forget to our dying day, and we set out. The one thing I have made up my mind. If we find out that Mina must be a vampire in the end, then she shall not go into that unknown and terrible land alone. I suppose it is thus that in old times one vampire meant many. Just as their hideous bodies could only rest in sacred earth, so the holiest love was the recruiting sergeant for their ghastly ranks. Wow, did he just volunteer to become a vampire if they couldn't cure her? Damn. We entered Carfax without trouble, and found all things the same as on the first occasion. It was hard to believe that amongst so prosaic surroundings of neglect and dust and decay, there was any ground for such fear as already we knew. Had not our minds been made up, and had there not been terrible memories to spur us on, we could hardly have proceeded with our task. We found no papers, or any sign of use in the house, and in the old chapel the great boxes looked just as we had seen them last. What are they going to do if they find Dracula? He's got to be in one of the houses. Dr. Van Helsing said to us solemnly as we stood before him, "And now, my friends, we have a duty here to do. We must sterilize this earth, so sacred of holy memories, that he has brought from a far distant land for such fell use." Fell use. He has chosen this earth because it has been holy. Thus we defeat him with his own weapon, for we make it more holy still. It was sanctified to such use of man. Now we sanctify it to God. As he spoke, he took from his bag a screwdriver and a wrench, and very soon the top of one of the cases was thrown open. The earth smelled musty and close, but we did not somehow seem to mind, for our attention was concentrated on the Professor. Taking from his box a piece of the sacred wafer, he laid it reverently on the earth, and then shutting down the lid began to screw it home, we aiding him as he worked. There was one thing I was unclear of before. Dracula doesn't need the earth of his homeland, he just needs sacred earth, which from his homeland. So it's actually more specific. One by one we treated in the same way each of the great boxes, and left them as we found them to all appearance. But in each was a portion of the host. When we closed the door behind us, the Professor said solemnly, "So much is already done. It may be that with all the others we can be so successful, then the sunset of this evening may shine on Madam Mina's forehead, all white as ivory, and with no stain." As we passed across the lawn on our way to the station to catch our train, we could see the front of the asylum. I looked eagerly, and in the window of my own room saw Mina. I waved my hand to her and nodded to tell that our work there was successfully accomplished. "I should have left someone with her." She nodded in reply to show that she understood. The last I saw, she was waving her hand in farewell. It was with a heavy heart that we sought the station and just caught the train, which was steaming in as we reached the platform. I have written this in the train. Piccadilly, 12:30 o'clock. Just before we reached Fenchurch Street, Lord Godalming said to me, "Quincy and I will find a locksmith. You had better not come with us in case there should be any difficulty. For under the circumstances, it wouldn't seem so bad for us to break into an empty house. But you are a solicitor, and the Incorporated Law Society might tell you that you should have known better." I demurred as to my not sharing any danger, even of odium, but he went on. "Besides, it will attract less attention if there are not too many of us. My title will make it all right with the locksmith, and with any policeman that may come along. You had better go with Jack and the Professor, and stay in the Green Park, somewhere in sight of the house, and when you see the door opened, and the smith has gone away, do you all come across?" Do you all come across? Yep. "We shall be on the lookout for you, and shall let you in." "The advice is good," said Van Helsing. So we said no more. Godalming and Morris hurried off in a cab, we following in another. At the corner of Arlington Street, our contingent got out and strolled into the Green Park. My heart beat as I saw the house on which so much of our hope was centred, looming up grim and silent in its deserted condition amongst its more lively and spruce-looking neighbours. We sat down on a bench within good view and began to smoke cigars so as to attract as little attention as possible. The minutes seemed to pass with leaden feet as we waited for the coming of the others. At length we saw a four-wheeler drive up. Out of it, in leisurely fashion, got Lord Godalming and Morris, and down from the box descended a thick-set working man with his rush-woven basket of tools. Morris paid the cabman, who touched his hat and drove away. Together the two ascended the steps, and Lord Godalming pointed out what he wanted done. The workman took off his coat leisurely and hung it on one of the spikes of the rail, saying something to a policeman who just then sauntered along. The policeman nodded acquiescence, and the man, kneeling down, placed his bag beside him. After searching through it, he took out a selection of tools, which he proceeded to lay beside him in an orderly fashion. Then he stood up, looked in the keyhole, blew into it, and turning to his employers, made some remark. Lord Godalming smiled, and the man lifted a good-sized bunch of keys. Selecting one of them, he began to probe the lock, as if feeling his way with it. After fumbling about for a bit, he tried a second, and then a third. All at once, the door opened under a slight push from him, and he and the two others entered the hall. We sat still. My own cigar burnt furiously, but Van Helsing's went cold altogether. We waited patiently as we saw the workman come out and bring his bag. Then he held the door partly open, steadying it with his knees, whilst he fitted a key to the lock. This he finally handed to Lord Godalming, who took out his purse and gave him something. The man touched his hat, took his bag, put on his coat, and departed. Not a soul took the slightest notice of the whole transaction. When the man had fairly gone, we three crossed the street and knocked at the door. It was immediately opened by Quincy Morris, beside whom stood Lord Godalming, lighting a cigar. "The place smells so vilely," said the latter as we came in. It did indeed smell vilely, like the old chapel at Carfax. And with our previous experience, it was plain to us that the Count had been using the place pretty freely. We moved to explore the house, all keeping together in case of attack, for we knew we had a strong and wily enemy to deal with, and as yet we did not know whether the Count might not be in the house. In the dining room, which lay at the back of the hall, we found 8 boxes of earth. 8 boxes, only out of the 9 which we sought. Our work was not over, and would never be until we found the missing box. First we opened the shutters of the window, which looked out across the narrow stone-flagged yard, and at a blank face of a stable, pointed to look like the front of a miniature house. There were no windows in it, so we were not afraid of being overlooked. We did not lose any time in examining the chests. With the tools which we had brought with us, we opened them one by one, and treated them as we had treated those others in the old chapel. It was evident to us that the Count was not at present in the house, and we proceeded to search for any of his effects. After a cursory glance at the rest of the rooms, from basement to attic, we came to the conclusion that the dining room contained any effects which might belong to the Count. And so we proceeded to minutely examine them. They lay in a sort of orderly disorder on the great dining room table. It's just like my dad's dining room table. Never cleaned. All of his shit all over it. There were title deeds of the Piccadilly house in a great bundle, deeds of the purchase of the houses at Mile End and Bermondsey, notepaper, envelopes, and pens and ink. All were covered up in thin wrapping paper to keep them from the dust. There were also a clothes brush, a brush and comb, and a jug and basin. The latter contained dirty water, which was reddened as if with blood. Last of all was a little heap of keys of all sorts and sizes, probably those belonging to the other houses. When we had examined this last find, Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris, taking accurate notes of the various addresses of the houses in the east and south, took with them the keys in a great bunch, and set out to destroy the boxes in these places. The rest of us are, with what patience we can, waiting their return, or the coming of the Count. End of chapter 22. Chapter 23. Dr. Seward's Diary. I really hope we're not going back again. 3rd of October. The time seemed terribly long whilst we were waiting for the coming of Godalming and Quincy Morris. The Professor tried to keep our minds active by using them all the time. I could see his beneficent purpose by the side glances which he threw from time to time at Harker. The poor fellow is overwhelmed in a misery that is appalling to see. Last night he was a frank, happy-looking man, with a strong, youthful face, full of energy, and with dark brown hair. Today he is a drawn, haggard old man, whose white hair matches well with the hollow, burning eyes and grief-written lines of his face. Damn, his hair went white overnight. That's something. His energy is still intact. In fact, he is like a living flame. This may yet be his salvation, for if all go well, it will tide him over the despairing period. He will then, in a kind of way, wake again to the realities of life. Poor fellow, I thought my own trouble was bad enough, but his... The Professor knows this well enough, and is doing his best to keep his mind active. What he has been saying was, under the circumstances, of absorbing interest. So well as I can remember, here it is. I wonder if this is the disturbing story that Van Helsing tells, that I heard about. Maybe? I have studied over and over again, since they came into my hands, all the papers relating to this monster. And the more I have studied, the greater seems the necessity to utterly stamp him out. All through there are signs of his advance, not only of his power, but of his knowledge of it. As I learned from the researches of my friend Arminius of Budapest, he was in life a most wonderful man, soldier, statesman, and alchemist, which later was the highest development of the science knowledge of his time. He had a mighty brain, a learning beyond compare, and a heart that knew no fear and no remorse. He dared even to attend the scholomance. Well plays, anyone? And there was no branch of knowledge of his time that he did not essay. Well, in him the brain powers survived the physical death, so it would seem that the memory was not all complete. In some faculties of mind he has been and is only a child, but he is growing, and some things that were childish at the first are now of man's stature. He is experimenting and doing it well. if it had not been that we have crossed his path, he would be yet, he may be yet if we fail, the father or furtherer of a new order of beings, whose road must lead through death, not life. Harker groaned and said, "And this is all arrayed against my darling. But how is he experimenting? The knowledge may help us to defeat him." "He has all along, since his coming, been trying his power, slowly but surely. That big child brain of his is working. Well for us, it is as yet a child brain, for had he dared at the first to attempt certain things, he would long ago have been beyond our power. However, he means to succeed, and a man who has centuries before him can afford to wait and to go slow. Festina lente may well be his motto." "I fail to understand," said Harker wearily. "Oh, do be more plain to me. Perhaps grief and trouble are dulling my brain." The professor laid his hand tenderly on his shoulder as he spoke. "Ah, my child, I will be plain. Do you not see how, of late, this monster has been creeping into knowledge experimentally? How he has been making use of the zoophagous patient to effect his entry into friend John's home? For your vampire, though in all afterwards he can come when and how he will, must at the first make entry only when asked thereto by an inmate. But these are not his most important experiments. Do we not see how, at the first, all these so great boxes were moved by others? He knew not then, but that must be so. But all the time that so great child brain of his was growing, and he began to consider whether he might not himself move the box. So he began to help. And then, when he found that this be all right, he tried to move them all alone. And so he progress, and he scatter these graves of him, and none but he know where they are hidden." I like how Van Helsing keeps saying like child brain when he means he means to say that Dracula's ignorant of some facts about his own existence. But he keeps saying child brain. "He may have intend to bury them deep in the ground, so that only he use them in the night, or at such time as he can change his form, they do him equal well, and none may know that these are his hiding place. But, my child, do not despair. This knowledge came to him just too late. Already all of his lairs but one be sterilized as for him, and before the sunset this shall be so. Then he have no place where he can move and hide. I delayed this morning so that we might be sure. Is there not more at stake for us than for him? Then why not be more careful than him? By my clock it is 1 hour, and already, if all be well, friend Arthur and Quincy are on their way to us. Today is our day, and we must go sure, if slow, and lose no chance. See, there are 5 of us when those absent ones return. Whilst we were speaking, we were startled by a knock at the hall door, the double postman's knock of the telegraph boy. We all moved out to the hall with one impulse, and Van Helsing, holding up his hand to keep us silent, stepped to the door and opened it. The boy handed in a dispatch. The professor closed the door again, and after looking at the direction, opened it and read aloud. Look out for D. He has just now, 12:45, come from Carfax hurriedly and hastened towards the south. He seems to be going the round. And may want to see you. Mina. There was a pause, broken by Jonathan Harker's voice. Now, God be thanked, we shall soon meet. Van Helsing turned to him quickly and said, God will act in his own way and time. Do not fear, and do not rejoice as yet, for what we wish for the moment may be our own undoings. I care for nothing now, he answered hotly, except to wipe out this brute from the face of creation. I would sell my soul to do it. Oh, hush, hush, my child, said Van Helsing. God does not purchase souls in this wise, and the devil, though he may purchase, does not keep faith. But God is merciful and just, and knows your pain, and your devotion to that dear Madam Mina. Think you how her pain would be doubled did she but hear your wild words? Do not fear any of us. We are all devoted to this cause, and today shall see the end. The time is coming for action. Today this vampire is limited to the powers of man, and till sunset he may not change. It will take him time to arrive here. See, it is 20 minutes past 1, and there are yet some times before he can hither come. Be he never so quick. What we must hope for is that my Lord Arthur and Quincy arrive first. About half an hour after we received Mrs. Harker's telegram, there came a quiet, resolute knock at the hall door. It was just an ordinary knock, such as is given hourly by thousands of gentlemen, but it made the professor's heart and mine beat loudly. We looked at each other, and together moved out into the hall. We each held ready to use our various armaments, the spiritual in the left hand, the mortal in the right. Van Helsing pulled back the latch, and holding the door half open, stood back, having both hands ready for action. The gladness of our hearts must have shone upon our faces when on the step, close to the door, we saw Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris. They came quickly in and closed the door behind them, the former saying, as they moved along the hall, "It is all right. We found both places. 6 boxes in each. We destroyed them all." "Destroyed?" asked the professor. "For him." We were silent for a minute, and then Quincy said, "There is nothing to do but to wait here. If, however, he doesn't turn up by 5 o'clock, we must start off, for it won't do to leave Mrs. Harker alone after sunset." "He will be here before long now," said Van Helsing, who had been consulting his pocketbook. Nota bene, in Madame's telegram, he went south from Carfax. That means he went to cross the river, and he could only do so at slack of tide, which should be something before 1 o'clock. That he went south has a meaning for us. He is as yet only suspicious, and he went from Carfax first to the place where he would suspect interference least, You must have been at Bermondsey only a short time before him. That he is not here already shows that he went to Mile End next. This took him some time, for he would then have to be carried over the river in some way. Believe me, my friends, we shall not have long to wait now. We should have ready some plan of attack, so that he may throw away no chance. Hush, there is no time now. Have all your arms. Be ready. He held up a warning hand as he spoke, for we all could hear a key softly inserted in the lock of the hall door. I could not but admire, even at such a moment, the way in which a dominant spirit asserted itself. In all our hunting parties and adventures in different parts of the world, Quincy Morris had always been the one to arrange the plan of action, and Arthur and I had been accustomed to obey him implicitly. Now the old habit seemed to be renewed instinctively. With a swift glance around the room, he at once laid out our plan of attack. Without speaking a word, with a gesture, placed us each in position. Van Helsing, Harker, and I were just behind the door, so that when it opened the Professor could guard it, whilst we, too, stepped between the incomer and the door. Godalming behind and Quincy in front stood just out of sight, ready to move in front of the window. We waited in a suspense that made the seconds pass with nightmare slowness. The slow, careful steps came along the hall. The Count was evidently prepared for some surprise. At least he feared it. Suddenly, with a single bound, he leapt into the room, winning away past us before any of us could raise a hand to stay him. There was something so panther-like in the movement, something so unhuman that it seemed to sober us all from the shock of his coming. The first to act was Harker, who with a quick movement threw himself before the door, leading into the room, in the front of the house. As the Count saw us, a horrible sort of snarl passed over his face, showing the eye-teeth long and pointed. But the evil smile as quickly passed into a cold stare of lion-like disdain. His expression again changed as, with a single impulse, we all advanced upon him. Thank you for following, friendo. It was a pity that we had not some better organized plan of attack, for even at the moment I wondered what we were to do. I did not myself know whether our lethal weapons would avail us anything. Harker evidently meant to try the matter, for he had ready his great kukuri knife, made a fierce and sudden cut at him. The blow was a powerful one. Only the diabolical quickness of the Count's leap back saved him. A second less, and the trenchant blade had shorn through his coat, making a wide gap, whence a bundle of banknotes and a stream of gold fell out. The expression of the Count's face was so hellish that for a moment I feared for Harker, though I saw him throw the terrible knife aloft again for another stroke. Instinctively, I moved forward with a protective impulse, holding the crucifix and wafer in my left hand. I felt a mighty power fly along my arm, and it was without surprise that I saw the monster cower back before a similar movement made spontaneously by each one of us. It would be impossible to describe the expression of hate and baffled malignity, of anger and hellish rage which came over the Count's face. His waxen hue became greenish-yellow by the contrast of his burning eyes, and the red scar on the forehead showed on the pallid skin like a palpitating wound. The next instant, with a sinuous dive, he swept under Harker's arm, where his blow could fall, and grasping a handful of the money from the floor, dashed across the room, threw himself at the window. Amid the crash and glitter of the falling glass, he tumbled into the flagged area below. Through the sound of the shivering glass I could hear the ting of the gold as some of the sovereigns fell on the flagging. We ran over and saw him spring unhurt from the ground. He, rushing up the steps, crossed the flagged yard and pushed open the stable door. There he turned and spoke to us. "You think to baffle me, with your pale faces all in a row, like sheep in a butcher's. You shall be sorry yet, each one of you. You think you have left me without a place to rest, but I have more. My revenge has just begun. I spread it over centuries, and time is on my side. Your girls that you all love are mine already, and through them you and others shall yet be mine. My creatures, to do my bidding, to be my jackals when I want to feed." With a contemptuous sneer, he passed quickly through the door, and we heard the rusty bolt creak as he fastened it behind him. A door beyond opened and shut. The first of us to speak was the professor. Realizing the difficulty of following him through the stable, we moved towards the hall. "We have learnt something. Much. Notwithstanding his brave words, he fears us. He fears time. He fears want. For if not, why he hurries so? His very tone betray him, or my ears deceive. Why take that money? You follow quick. You are hunters of the wild beast, and understand it so. For me, I make sure that nothing here may be of use to him, if so that he returns." As he spoke, he put the money remaining in his pocket, took the title deeds in the bundle, as Harker had left them, and swept the remaining things into the open fireplace, where he set fire to them with a match. Godalming and Morris had rushed out into the yard, and Harker had lowered himself from the window to follow the Count. He had, however, bolted the stable door, and by the time they had forced it open, there was no sign of him. Van Helsing and I tried to make inquiry at the back of the house, but the mews was deserted, and no one had seen him depart. It was now late in the afternoon, and sunset was not far off. We had to recognize that our game was up. With heavy hearts, we agreed with the professor when he said, "Let us go back to Madame Mina. Poor, poor dear Madame Mina. All we can do just now is done, and we can there at least protect her. But we need not despair. There is but one more earth box, and we must try to find it. When that is done, all may yet be well." I could see that he spoke as bravely as he could to comfort Harker. The poor fellow was quite broken down, now and again gave a low groan which he could not suppress. He was thinking of his wife. With sad hearts we came back to my house, where we found Mrs. Harker waiting for us, with an appearance of cheerfulness which did honour to her bravery and unselfishness. When she saw our faces, her own became as pale as death. For a second or two, her eyes were closed, as if she were in secret prayer. And then she said cheerfully, "I can never thank you all enough. Oh, my poor darling." As she spoke, she took her husband's grey head in her hands and kissed it. "Lay your poor head here and rest it. All will yet be well, dear. God will protect us if he so will it in his good intent." The poor fellow groaned. There was no place for words in his sublime misery. We had a sort of perfunctory supper together, and I think it cheered us all up somewhat. It was perhaps the mere animal heat of food to hungry people, for none of us had eaten anything since breakfast, or the sense of companionship may have helped us, but anyhow, we were all less miserable, and saw the morrow as not altogether without hope. True to our promise, we told Mrs. Harker everything which had passed, and although she grew snowy white at times when danger had seemed to threaten her husband, and red at others when his devotion to her was manifested, she listened bravely and with calmness. When we came to the part where Harker had rushed at the Count so recklessly, she clung to her husband's arm and held it tight, as though her clinging could protect him from any harm that might come. She said nothing, however, till the narration was all done, and matters had been brought up to the present time. Then, without letting go of her husband's hand, she stood up amongst us and spoke. Oh, that I could give any idea of that scene, of that sweet, sweet, good woman in all the radiant beauty of her youth and animation, with the red scar on her forehead, of which she was conscious, and which we saw with grinding of our teeth, remembering whence and how it came. Her loving kindness against our grim hate, her tender faith against all our fears and doubting, and we, knowing that, so far as symbols went, she, with all her goodness and purity and faith, was outcast from God. "Jonathan," she said. The words sounded like music on her lips. It was so full of love and tenderness. "Jonathan, dear, and you all my true friends, I want you to bear something in mind through all this dreadful time. I know that you must fight, that you must destroy, even as you destroyed the false Lucy, so that the true Lucy might live hereafter. But it is not a work of hate. That poor soul who has wrought all this misery is the saddest case of all. Just think what will be his joy when he too is destroyed in his worser part, that his better part may have spiritual immortality. You must be pitiful to him too, though it may not hold your hands from his destruction." As she spoke, I could see her husband's face darken and draw together, as though the passion in him was shrivelling his being to its core. Instinctively the clasp on his wife's hand grew closer, till his knuckles looked white. She did not flinch from the pain which I knew she must have suffered, but looked at him with eyes that were more appealing than ever. As she stopped speaking, he leapt to his feet, almost tearing his hand from hers as he spoke. "May God give him into my hand just long enough to destroy that earthly life of him, which we are aiming at. If beyond it I could send his soul forever and ever to burning hell, I would do it." "Oh, hush, hush, in the name of the good God. Don't say such things, Jonathan, my husband, or you will crush me with fear and horror. Just think, my dear, I've been thinking all this long, long day of it, that perhaps some day I too may need such pity, and that some other like you, and with equal cause for anger, may deny it to me. Oh, my husband, indeed, I would have spared you such a thought had there been another way. But I pray God may not have treasured your wild words except as the heartbroken wail of a very loving and sorely stricken man. Oh, God, let these poor white hairs go in evidence of what he has suffered, who all his life has done no wrong, and on whom so many sorrows have come. We men were all in tears now. There was no resisting them, and we wept openly. She wept too, to see that her sweeter counsels had prevailed. Her husband flung himself on his knees beside her, and putting his arms round her, hid his face in the folds of her dress. Van Helsing beckoned to us, and we stole out of the room, leaving the two loving hearts alone with their God. Before they retired, the professor fixed up the room against any coming of the vampire, and assured Mrs. Harker that she might rest in peace. Odd phrase of words right there. She tried to school herself to the belief, and manifestly, for her husband's sake, tried to seem content. It was a brave struggle, and was, I think and believe, not without its reward. Van Helsing had placed at hand a bell which either of them was to sound in case of any emergency. When they had retired, Quincy, Godalming, and I arranged that we should sit up, dividing the night between us, and watch over the safety of the poor stricken lady. The first watch falls to Quincy, so the rest of us shall be off to bed as soon as we can. Godalming has already turned in, for his is the second watch. Now that my work is done, I too shall go to bed. Jonathan Harker's journal. Doing well. So just to recap, they've destroyed all the boxes they could find of Dracula's but one, and they confronted Dracula at his Piccadilly house, and Dracula managed to escape their ambush and basically goaded them as he left. But Van Helsing noted that Dracula seemed a little bit desperate despite his words, as he was like, why be in such a hurry? Why take the gold with him at all, if he didn't need it? So, yes. Anyway, Jonathan Harker's journal. The 3rd to the 4th of October, close to midnight. I thought yesterday would never end. There was over me a yearning for sleep, in some sort of blind belief that to wake would be to find things changed, and that any change must now be for the better. Before we parted, we discussed what our next step was to be, but we could arrive at no result. All we knew was that one earth box remained, and that the Count alone knew where it was. If he chooses to lie hidden, he may baffle us for years. And in the meantime, the thought is too horrible. I dare not even think it now. This I know, that if ever there was a woman who was all perfection. That one is my poor, wronged darling. I loved her 1,000 times more for her sweet pity of last night, a pity that made my own hate of the monster seem despicable. Surely God will not permit the world to be the poorer by the loss of such a creature. This is hope to me. We are all drifting reefwards now, and faith is our only anchor. Thank God. Mina is sleeping, and sleeping without dreams. I fear what her dreams might be like, with such terrible memories to ground them in. She has not been so calm within my seeing since the sunset. Then, for a while, there came over her face a repose, which was like spring after the blasts of March. I thought at the time it was the softness of the red sunset on her face, but somehow now I think it has a deeper meaning. I'm not sleepy myself, though I am weary to death. However, I must try to sleep, for there is tomorrow to think of. There is no rest for me until... Later. I must have fallen asleep, for I was awakened by Mina, who was sitting up in bed, with a startled look on her face. I could see easily, for we did not leave the room in darkness. She had placed a warning hand over my mouth, and now she whispered in my ear, "Hush, there is someone in the corridor." I got up softly, crossing the room, gently opened the door. Just outside, stretched on a mattress, lay Mr. Morris, wide awake. He raised a warning hand for silence as he whispered to me, "Hush, back to bed. It's all right. One of us will be here all night. We don't mean to take any chances." His look and gesture forbade discussion, so I came back and told Mina. She sighed, and positively a shadow of a smile stole over her poor, pale face as she put her arms round me and said softly, "Oh, thank God for good, brave men." With a sigh, she sank back again to sleep. I write this now, as I am not sleepy, though I must try again. 4th of October, morning. Once again during the night I was wakened by Mina. This time we had all had a good sleep, for the grey of the coming dawn was making the windows into sharp oblongs, and the gas flame was like a speck rather than a disk of light. She said to me hurriedly, "Go, call the professor. I want to see him at once." "Why?" I asked. "I have an idea." "I have an idea." Never mind. "I suppose it must have come in the night and matured without my knowing it. He must hypnotize me before the dawn, and then I shall be able to speak. Go quick, dearest. The time is getting close." Seems like an odd request. I went to the door. Dr. Seward was resting on the mattress, and seeing me, he sprang to his feet. "Is anything wrong?" he asked in alarm. "No," I replied, "but Mina wants to see Dr. Van Helsing at once." "I will go," he said, and hurried into the professor's room. 2 or 3 minutes later, Van Helsing was in the room in his dressing gown, and Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming were with Dr. Seward at the door, asking questions. When the professor saw Mina, a smile, a positive smile, ousted the anxiety of his face. He rubbed his hands as he said, "Oh, my dear Madam Mina, this is a indeed a change. See, friend Jonathan, we have got our dear Madam Mina, as of old, back to us today. Then turning to her, he said cheerfully, And what am I to do for you? For at this hour you do not want me for nothing. I want you to hypnotize me, she said. Do it before the dawn, for I feel that then I can speak, and speak freely. Be quick, for the time is short. Without a word, he motioned her to sit up in bed. We're getting sleepy. Sleepy. Looking fixedly at her, he commenced to make passes in front of her, from over the top of her head downward, with each hand in turn. Mina gazed at him fixedly for a few minutes, during which my own heart beat like a trip hammer, for I felt that some crisis was at hand. Gradually her eyes closed, and she sat stock still. Only by the gentle heaving of her bosom could one know that she was alive. The professor made a few more passes, and then stopped, and I could see that his forehead was covered with great beads of perspiration. Such sweaty work hypnotizing somebody. Mina opened her eyes, but she did not seem the same woman. There was a faraway look in her eyes, and her voice had a sad dreaminess which was new to me. Raising his hand to impose silence, the professor motioned to me to bring the others in. Hi, Zetanicus. Zetanicus? How you doing? They came on tiptoe, closing the door behind them, and stood at the foot of the bed, looking on. Mina appeared not to see them. The stillness was broken by Van Helsing's voice, speaking in a low, level tone, which would not break the current of her thoughts. Where are you? The answer came in a neutral way. I do not know. Sleep has no place it can call its own. For several minutes there was silence. Mina sat rigid, and the professor stood staring at her fixedly. The rest of us hardly dared to breathe. The room was growing lighter. Without taking his eyes from Mina's face, Dr. Van Helsing motioned me to pull up the blind. As I did so, and the day seemed just upon us. A red streak shot up, and a rosy light seemed to diffuse itself through the room. On the instant, the professor spoke again. Where are you now? The answer came dreamily, but with intention. It were as though she were interpreting something. I have heard her use the same tone when reading her shorthand notes. I do not know. It is all strange to me. What do you see? I can see nothing. It is all dark. What do you hear? I could detect the strain in the professor's patient voice. The lapping of water. It is gurgling by, and little waves leap. I can hear them on the outside. And you are on a ship? We all looked at each other, trying to glean something from each other. We were afraid to think. The answer came quick. Oh, yes. What else do you hear? the sound of men stamping overhead as they run about. There is the creaking of a chain, and the loud tinkle as the jack of the capstan falls into the ratchet. What are you doing? I'm still, oh so still. It is like death. The voice faded away into a deep breath, as of one sleeping, and the open eyes closed again. By this time the sun had risen, and we were all in the full light of day. Dr. Van Helsing placed his hands on Mina's shoulders and lay her head down softly on her pillow. She lay like a sleeping child for a few moments, and then with a long sigh awoke and stared in wonder to see us all around her. "Have I been talking in my sleep?" was all she said. She seemed, however, to know the situation without telling, though she was eager to know what she had told. The professor repeated the conversation, and she said, "Then there is not a moment to lose. It may not be yet too late." Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming started for the door, but the professor's calm voice called them back. "Stay, my friends. That ship, wherever it was weighing anchor at the moment in your so great port of London. Which of them is it that you seek? God be thanked that we have once again a clue, though whether it may lead us, we know not. We have been blind somewhat, blind after the manner of men, since we can look back and see what we might have seen looking forward, if we had been able to see what we might have seen. Alas, but that sentence is a puddle, is it not? Yes, it is. We can know now what was in the Count's mind when he sees that money, though Jonathan's so fierce knife put him in the danger that even he dread. He meant escape. Hear me, escape. He saw that with but one earth box left, and a pack of men following like dogs after the fox, this London was no place for him. He have take his last earth box on board a ship, and he leave the land. He think to escape. But no, we follow him. Tally ho, as friend Arthur would say when he put on his red frock. Our old fox is wily. Oh, so wily, and we must follow with wile. I too am wily, and I think his mind in a little while. In meantime we may rest, and in peace, for there are between us which he do not want to pass, and which he could not, if he would. Unless the ship were to touch the land, and then only at full or slack tide. See, and the sun is just rose, and all day to sunset is us. Let us take bath, and dress, and have breakfast, which we all need, and which we can eat comfortably, since he be not in the same land with us." Mina looked at him appealingly as she asked, "But why need we seek him further, when he is gone away from us?" He took her hand and patted it as he replied, "Ask me nothing as yet. When we have breakfast, then I will answer all questions." He would say no more, and we separated to dress. After breakfast, Mina repeated her question. He looked at her gravely for a minute and then said sorrowfully, "Because, my dear, dear Madam Mina, now more than ever we must find him, even if we have to follow him to the jaws of hell." She grew paler as she asked faintly, Why? Because, he answered solemnly, he can live for centuries, and you are but mortal, woman. Time is now to be dreaded, since once he puts that mark upon your throat. I was just in time to catch her as she fell forward in a faint. End of chapter 23. Oh, doing well. I might call this stream a little bit early, chat. My voice is starting to get a bit raspy. However, I'm thinking maybe Friday stream around this time. I might, if not continue the story, maybe I'll do some cozy gaming or something. Maybe. See how we go. Who's on? Mireya's on. Ari's on, obviously. Mountain Settler's on. Did someone raid Mountain Settler? Because they have like a lot of people watching. Aw, kitties. That's such a nice stream. Okay, thank you everyone for being here. Also, I would just like to show off something really quickly. I inherited my granddad's tools from his shed, which were all just ridiculously rusty. And I cleaned them. This was caked in rust. Cleaned it. So it's a set of measuring calipers for measuring things, but I don't know. I just kind of liked restoring it, and all the other tools which I'm scrubbing the rust off of. Just a little project. I don't know. I think it's a waste to get rid of old tools that can still be used. Anyway. Alright, so I'll probably see you Friday. If not, then next Tuesday. For either gaming or Dracula. We'll see. See how I feel. Who am I going to share? I'm going to shout out my friendo, Acid, who is, well, I like lurking in Acid streams, so get chat.
Glory to you and your house.
Wait, that says Salty Chimkin. What the? Why does that say Salty Chimkin? Why it broke? Why is it broke? God damn it. A second, Dad. Shout out. Text. Username. Is it supposed to be something different? I don't know. Username is supposed to be Acid. Did I shout myself out? No, I didn't. Maybe username's the person who did the command. special identifier. Target user. Is it target user?
Glory to you
There we go.
and your house.
Glory to you, Acid. It's target username, not username. Very good. Here's the raid command. We're going to raid Mountain Settler. Let's go see the kitties. Please join me for the raid so you can go see the kitties. They're sleeping and they're purring. They're so cute. Oh, one of them just woke up. Oh, it's going back to sleep. Okay. Yeah, right. So I will see you Friday, maybe? Or next week. Okay. Goodbye, friendos. Bye for now. Bye-bye. Thank you for being here.